Hey everyone, it is Brian Kaz here, joined by my friend and business partner Sean Casey. We have some extra training for you guys as automated ads members right here. So we have a lot of existing training, which I'll go over in just a bit in case you missed it. But on this call, we'll be a bit more focused on like insider tips and tricks and shortcuts and just stuff to basically be aware of. I'll also do like a brief overview of the existing training that we have, as well as a brief overview of like a few things that you may have missed just in case. And I'll do that towards the start, and then we'll kind of move into some tips and jumpstart methods and stuff, as well as what to basically expect in the future and some cool updates and stuff that we have in the works. And as always, if you have any questions or anything like that, you can feel free to type those in the chat box, and either Sean or Sharon will basically answer you while I'm basically talking, or towards the end of this call. We're happy to answer questions live as well, but feel free to type those in anytime that you want. And yes, just to get the question answered out of the way, I'm sure a couple of you will probably ask, is this being recorded? And yes, this will be recorded, and we will have this basically posted in the training area within about a day or so. So it takes usually a little time to render it and post it up. So by either tonight or tomorrow morning, we'll have this up in the members area under the training for you to review as you see fit. So without further ado, we'll get the show on the road. So once again, this is the Automated Ads Extra Training, Insider Tips and Tricks and Shortcuts. So I'll give you a brief overview, of the training here. So, well, first of all, we have lots of prior, basically training, both in the form of webinars, videos, as well as a course too. And those basically cover an overview of how to use automated ads, how to get ad management clients if that's what you want to do, how to set up Facebook pixels and redirects and all that stuff, as well as just how to basically do Facebook ads and use the software and all that. So all the training that basically covers that, we already have. And in just a minute, I'll actually do a brief live demo of where you can find that, as well as a couple of the basic features and stuff that you may have missed. But after we do that, the rest of the call will be basically focused on some extra tips to help you out in various ways, including a handful of tidbits from some prior calls that you may have missed too. But most of this will be some new stuff that we think will help you guys a great deal. So with that, I'm just going to pause the screen for a second as I go inside of automated ads to kind of show off where some of the prior training and give you like a brief overview of that, as well as share a few little tidbits with the tool itself. So just give me a second here, and we'll do that. All right, so right here we're inside of the members area, and we're just in dashboard, and you can click on right here. You can kind of see, all the other areas that you can go to and whatnot. You'd want to be in the dashboard or the campaigns to start with. So at the very top, you'll see. Let me just get there we go. At the very top, you'll see this info right here. You'll want to pick the campaigns or the ad accounts that you have that you want to show info for. In this case, I just basically picked a few. We have a lot of accounts, and we have a few, on the demo one right here. And then you can sort basically data by, cost per click, cost per lead, cost per sale, and all that stuff. And this just gives you essentially an overview of all that right there. And I'll get into that in just a bit, but I want to show off first the training area. So if you go to, let's pull this up on this other one. Oops, wrong one. So if you go to right here, if you click on that, and then you go down to where it says training, there's also an FAQ and email support there, but if you click on the training, you'll see this area right here, and we have a bunch of different training and stuff. And I'll just give you a brief overview of what's what. So one of the first things you'll see is you'll see an intro video right here, which just kind of is like an overview of basically the software itself. Then if you're completely brand new and you've never done a Facebook ad in your life, we actually have a free book right here that kind of walks you through step by step how to set up an ad within Facebook to basically start. So you can download that and get going with that. We also have a Jumpstart training package here to get you going. Again, you can click there and read more on that. And if you're interested in how to get more like Facebook ad management clients, so let's say either in place of or instead of, or you know, in place of or on top of selling your own products or services, if you you know, wanted to kind of do this as a service for basically others and manage other accounts, we know that there's a decent amount of interest in that. You can watch this one. This is about a half-hour video on how to basically get Facebook ad management clients with like basically tips and stuff relevant to you right there. And of course, each time we have the video right there as well as the slides. So if you want to see just the slides, or I'd encourage you to watch the video if that's of interest to you, but we have the slides in case you want to go through it later. And the next video down, we have more kind of like a little bit of a technical one, I'd say, is how to collect email leads, track results, and basically sell, you know, anything that you want. Kind of walks you through some of the setup stuff right there and gives some good tips and stuff with you right there. And if you want to know how to like set up a pixel or like a redirect or anything like that, that's also mentioned in there. And then we also have a cool little tool that helps you actually kind of do redirect links within Facebook. So even if you're just an affiliate, we have a cool way for you to basically track your results even as an affiliate. And that's all explained basically in the video right here. Then this is basically a tool down below that to help, which is basically mentioned in the video there. And then we also have, again, another, this is essentially a webinar that we had right here that gives another overview of everything and basically answers a lot of most frequently asked questions that you might have. So I just wanted to briefly go over all that right there so you know where the training is. So if any of those are of particular interest to you, or if you just want to do like the brief overview, you can see all that stuff right here. And the training that we'll have today will show up probably at the very bottom of this, again, within the next day or so. And you'll see it listed, you know with the date of right now and all that, so you'll know what's what. So, having said that, you know, with that said right there, that's where all the past trainings and all that are. But I want to briefly show off a few things that are also mentioned in the trainings, but I want to make sure that you guys are basically aware of because they're kind of important, you know, not to miss right there. So, one of the first things is that the campaigns that you have will show up right here. And if you want to list your active campaigns first, if you have a bunch of them, just click here and it'll list the active ones first. In this case, I have it listing I clicked on cost per lead, so I'm trying to look at stuff like what the cost per lead is and trying to basically optimize based on that. There's two main things that I want to show off right here. One is you can click on any of these campaigns that you want, so let's just click on this one right here. You want to check it out, and it sometimes does. If you have like a lot of ads, it can take a little while to load. Usually within like half a minute or so, you should be fine. If you don't have like anything there, it loads like really fast. But we have some campaigns that literally have like dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of ad sets, and it pulls up a lot of data on that. So there we go right there. And of course, it has all the campaigns and stuff that we have right there. And again, you can sort by anything that you want: cost per lead, cost per sale, That's a lot up to you. Just click here. But I want to share a few things. So one, in the basic overview, it tells you under each ad set that you have, it tells you the cost per click, cost per lead, and the cost per purchase as well. In this case, we do a very good job of turning clicks into leads. That's why the cost per click and cost per lead are very close in most of the cases here. In a typical one, obviously your cost per lead might be a couple or a few times more than your cost per click would be right here. If you want to view a report based upon the campaign as a whole, you'd scroll down to the very bottom and you just click on View Report right there at the very bottom. You can also view a report on any individual ad set that you want as well. So if you have a bunch of ad sets, you probably want to view a report based upon the whole thing. But you can also just click on any of these in individual ad sets. And I'll just click right here. And this will give you an overview of the specific ad set in question. If you were on the prior screen, you could click on View Report for the whole campaign. But when you're on the ad set itself, you have a few options. Not only can you view the report for just that ad set, you can also do a bunch of other stuff. So what you could do here is, I'll show you how to view the report in a second, but this is where you can create basically optimized clones and stuff with automated ads. So if you want to optimize by age, you would click here. If you want to optimize by gender, you would click there. If you want to optimize by region, which basically is like, if you're in the U.S., it'd be like, like Northeast, Midwest, basically stuff like that. Like we basically group a bunch of states together. If you're in other places internationally, it's just basically regions, because we oftentimes find that there's certain regions that might be better or worse for you for various reasons. And you can also optimize by time. I'd encourage you right now actually not to use time for the time being, because we're actually doing an update that will make that basically even better. That should be done very soon. We were hoping for that last week, but a few hurdles basically popped up with some of the stuff that they were working on with this, so it's taking a little bit longer, but hopefully by this week or next week we should have that out, or the update out there. So to basically explain, what it currently does is you can optimize by time, where you can have like a lifetime budget and it will only show an ad during the best times for you. However, I'm not really a fan of the lifetime budgets for a few reasons. So on the newer update, it will allow you to have like essentially a daily budget and turn the ad on or off based upon times that we see are basically working well. And in a handful of niches and ads and stuff like that, you'll see major differences between like mornings, afternoons, night, and odd times like that. And even on certain days, like in some cases, like a Tuesday and Wednesday might be really good, but a Friday might suck, or a Thursday might suck, and it varies a great deal. You're probably there's no necessarily logic to easily guess as to why, and that's why we have basically a tool like this right here. You can also optimize by basically almost all those things at once, which is probably the recommended way to start with right there. And that basically will optimize all that for you, and it creates clones that are basically optimized. Now, there's a few basically tips that I would suggest with that. One, make more than one optimized clone. And I'll explain why, but basically, in just a bit, I'll actually explain why. But basically, in a nutshell, you're randomly competing against other basically advertisers on Facebook. So sometimes it's possible that your ad might be put against some easy competition, and in other cases, you might be up against people that are spending a fortune that don't really care about earning money. So doing a single test isn't really a fair actual test. You'll want to do, usually I'd say at least have like a few different tests out there before you can officially say, okay, this one is basically better, or this one, is not. And I'll explain again more of that as I get back to the slides in just a bit. And to do any of these, like again, all you'd have to do is you could click, let's just click right here, and then it'll basically ask you, like in this case, it will automatically create several new ad sets for you, and you can run basically a split test for, let's say, like 7 days. I recommend usually about a week. Reason is sometimes like Facebook itself takes like a few days to basically optimize ads, so you kind of want to make sure that you give it time before you basically judge. And then with automated ads on top of that, it basically analyzes it every day as well. So sometimes it might take a few days to really see kind of what's what, or for an ad to go from okay to actually really good. Now, if an ad's completely like horrendous on day one, of course you can shut those off, but you don't want to prematurely shut off ones too early. So that's a mistake I oftentimes see guys, like they'll create like a new optimized ad, and let's say they're getting like leads for like $1, and the new optimized ad is like $1.10. They'll say, oh, this costs more, so I'm going to shut this down now. Don't. In cases like that, you'll want to wait at least a few days, ideally more like a week, because a lot of times you'll actually be surprised and see that lead cost or per sale cost will come like way down if you just give it a few days. Now, if it's like $1 lead and you see one that's like $50 a lead, obviously that's probably bad. You can shut those off. And this will be basically a split test that will test different age groups and stuff for you right there. I'll just cancel that for right now because you get the idea with that. And you see each of these options will be slightly different. Like if we click on to optimize by all those right there, in this case, we'll basically ask you, what is your daily budget for this ad set? So if you want to spend $10 a day or $50 a day, you'd enter that. Then you also want to say what you want to optimize it for, and your choices are either leads or purchases or sales. I recommend if you're running a smaller campaign and you're selling like a more expensive product, like not like a $5 product or so, or a $10 product, you'll want to optimize by leads, especially to start with, because the more results you get, the sooner, the faster it can actually optimize your campaign and get results. I mean, if you're selling a $1,000 product and you have a $10 a day, budget, if you don't get sales for 2 weeks, that's not necessarily bad. I mean, that basically, if you get a sale every 2 weeks, that's $140 to make 1,000, which obviously would be really good, but you can't run it for a few days and say, oh, hey, it didn't make a sale, therefore, it's basically bad. And on that note, too, you typically need a lot of results for it to basically optimize more, because if you get one sale a month, there's not a lot of data that it can actually play with. It could be by random chance why you got that sale. But if you're getting, many leads a day or many sales a day, there's a lot more data for it to really see, okay, if 2/3 of the sales are from, let's say, the Midwest, it's probably safe to say that statistically, there's a reason why, and we should possibly target that more. Whereas if you have like a $1,000 price point and you get one sale a month, and by random chance that sale is in the South, it doesn't necessarily mean that the South is better, because it could just be by random chance that you got that one sale. So hopefully that makes sense right there. So each time you just follow that right there, and just follow basically instructions that says each time right there. And again, you'll see when you click any of these, it will tell you the number of new ad sets it will make, because it will basically do like a kind of like a split test almost. And when it makes an optimized split test. Not only is it testing some stuff right off the bat for you, it's analyzing the data, on a consistent basis. Not only looking at your current new optimized ads, but your existing one too, and just comparing data and making adjustments based on that. Now, another thing too is if you want to automatically grow your budget or grow your ad, I should say, which is a problem that a lot of people have. Like once they have a winner, like let's say you have a $10 a day budget, and after a day you realize, gee, for every $10 I spend, I make 20. Naturally you want to do what? You want to obviously grow that budget. But a lot of people run into issues where they say, okay, well, I turned 10 into 20, so I want to spend $100 now, and I'll make 200, and life will be just great. And then I want to spend 1,000 and make 2,000, and life will be better. The problem with that is the way Facebook works is you can have a very optimized ad set go from being good to being basically crappy just by increasing the budget by too much. So we have some artificial intelligence kind of built in that helps you grow in a way that doesn't basically ruin your ad set. So if you want to put a certain ad set basically on autopilot and manage it and grow at the same time, and only grow if it's actually doing well, it won't actually grow if you're doing bad, you just click on right here. And again, I'll just ask you a handful of questions like, what is your max daily budget? And this basically means like, at a maximum, what do you want to spend? So it won't continue to grow and grow and grow and grow until you're spending like, $1 million a day, unless you say your budget is $1 million, which, obviously that'd be very impressive. But, let's say you're like, hey, my budget right now is, let's say it's $10 a day or $25 a day, and you say, hey, just to test, I want maximum to never be over $200. You basically would enter that right there, and then it'd say, what is basically the cutoff of what you think would be, a good price for a lead or a sale. So you want to pick either leads or sales right here, and in this case, let's say for a lead, you say, hey, anything that's less than 60 cents is good. You'd say 60 cents. Now, don't say what you want the lead cost to be, because if you say 60 cents, it doesn't mean that it will only look to charge you 60 cents. It will try to look to reduce that cost even more. But if it's like, if something costs like $2 and basically your cutoff is 60 cents, it then knows, okay, well, this is way too far basically over what you want, so we probably shouldn't even bother with that. Whereas if it has one at like 65 cents and your basically cutoff is 60, it knows, hey, I can probably play with this a little more, see if it can go down. If not, it cuts it off. So it gives it a good indicator, but you should basically type in what your maximum that you'd want to spend per lead or per sale is, not what your ideal is, just what your maximum is. And of course, that'd just be based on whether you pick leads or sales right there. Then you just click auto adjust, and you'd be fine right there. And this is just an example one right here. The other thing that
hey Brian.
Yeah.
Let me jump in for a second, because Gregor, and hi everybody, it's Sean. So Gregor was asking a question. It says he started using automated ads. He optimized for 2 test ads, and the optimization for the new ads was at a higher cost than the original ads. Okay, and he tested it for 24 hours and then shut it down. Did he do something wrong? And the answer is, well, you did something right because you ran the test, but the part you did wrong is you shut it down before anything could happen. Okay, one of the things that you've got to understand is that in order for anything to get optimized, you need feedback, right? I mean, it's like driving down the road. If you were driving down the road with your eyes closed and you have no feedback, like, hey, am I even on the road, right? Then you can't do it. So in terms of optimizing your results, we've got to get information back and then to be able to optimize them. And 24 hours is nowhere near enough time. Even if you were spending, you know, $100,000 on a test, which please don't do that, but, you know, and you were getting cheap leads, we can't optimize and work with Facebook fast enough to optimize, you know, literally within the first day. Okay, you've got to, like Brian said, you got to give it a few days to run. You know, I mean, if it's a complete disaster, you're not comfortable, turn it off by all means. Or if you've set the automated caps that Brian was just talking about, the system will shut itself off. But realize that in order to run the test and optimize, you've got to let it go long enough for something to happen. Okay, testing and marketing is never fun except when it works the first time, but you never give yourself the chance to get vastly improved results if you don't run tests. So just so you know that you know, you didn't. It's not really that you did something wrong as you asked the question, as much as it's just you shut it off too soon, so you didn't give it a chance to come up with great results.
Plus there's two other very important things with that too. Facebook itself will also optimize individual ad sets, and they usually take at least a few days to kick in good. So if you wait only a day, you don't give Facebook a chance, and you don't give the automated ads a chance to really kick in. So like on, let's say for instance that you're spending like $1 a lead, and you create a clone optimized campaign based on the data that you have, and let's say the new one's like $1.20, so it's a bit more initially on day one. Chances are initially your original one may have been a lot more, but over time basically optimized down, and it can be the exact same way here. But secondly, it's also important to also realize, and this is something that a lot of people don't really understand or know, is that every ad set that you make is put in a random group basically of other advertisers. And sometimes you might be put in a very good group where it's not terribly competitive, and you might get very cheap per lead or per sales costs just because you're not up against you know, competition basically making outrageous bids. But on the flip side, you might be randomly up against like Pepsi or Coca-Cola or some like very big budget place that might be trying to outbid everyone for anything, and that can skyrocket, you know, your costs and all that. So you don't want to just make one optimized ad set. You want to make at least a few, because you don't know if by random chance one's put in a bad ad group, and there's nothing that can really be done in that case. I mean, you can slowly optimize and make it better, but if you make a few at a time and you see like 1 or 2 of those 3 or so are doing really good and one's not, you know, that's why we basically recommend that right there. Now, the other thing I want to show off, this is the view report, which you can do both on an ad set basis as well as on a campaign basis. In this case, I'll just do it on the individual ad set basis. You click view report right there. And this is for just the individual ad set, not the campaign as a whole. And it gives like a breakdown, you know, of some stuff right there, like the amount of likes and comments and stuff off that. So you can see like what the engagement is. Then right here, this is basically the tips from Facebook itself at the top. I largely ignore those because they try to suggest that you increase your bid by a lot all the time. Take that one with a grain of salt because that's from Facebook, not from us. So you want to pay attention more so to the stuff that we basically talk about right here. And this is one where if you're looking to manage this for, you know, other clients, you can run a report, you know, on their ads, and you can seem like you're the smartest guy in the room, because if you were to look at this stuff by hand, it would be very hard to get like a lot of worthwhile info. It would take a very, very long time. And what would take you days to basically analyze this can do in like 30 seconds. So right here, we see that, you know, hey, on a per lead basis, we have some days where it's as low as 17 cents, some days where it's as high as 93 cents, but as a whole, we're around the 55-cent range, which is great. And it says, hey, our cheapest conversions in that time have been from men age 55 to 64. The cheapest regions in this ad set are right here. The best times for making sales and stuff, or leads in this case, because I optimize for leads, are right here. And it gives, again, the cheapest times and best times for best regions for leads and purchases and all that. And we see right here, when the best sales are, and the best places and the best time. Like we see right here, hey, Tuesday night seems really good for sales, and some of the wee hours of the morning, in the early morning, I shouldn't say wee hours. There's a lot of very early morning times right there. Earlier than I like to wake up, let's just say. That seems to be some pretty good times for sales, as well as later in the evening, where you might say, hey, it looks like maybe mid-afternoon might not be the best time, but a bunch of other times look pretty good right here. You see how the day to days or the day-to-day can change too. So when you give this data to someone or to a prospect that you're about to possibly manage, it makes you look really smart, and they don't know how in the world they're going to optimize based on the info that you just gave them. Right there. So that's something to note right there. And there's actually more features that will basically add to the report in the near future as well, like basically types of ads and all sorts of info right there that we'll add soon as well. So right off the bat, you can look pretty smart with that right there. So with that, I'm just going to pause the screen as I go back to the slides, because I just want to give you a brief overview of a few things right there first. Alrighty. So now we're going to move on to some extra tidbits and basically stuff that we learned that we think would be useful, for you guys. So first, what can you advertise on Facebook? I just want to clear this out. Pretty much anything that's compliant. So they're not a fan of violence or stuff with guns, or basically stuff like that. And you can read their terms of service if you have a question. But you can sell almost anything you want, whether it's a physical product, a digital info product, software, services. You can sell to consumers. You can sell to businesses. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you want to basically essentially target different kinds of things. We'll get more into that in just a bit. This can also be for your own offers, or also for affiliate offers. And in fact, we actually released a special tool for free that can help you track your ad results for affiliate sales as well and stuff there. And this is kind of what that looks like. If you have your own offer, your Facebook ad would go to your opt-in page, which would then go to your squeeze page, or no, would then go to your sales page. The opt-in page is the squeeze page. And then after the sales page would go to your thank you page. And again, if you watch, we have a training video on how to set this all up, including how to set up the pixels and the redirect. So I won't waste time explaining all that, because that's basically explained in that video right there. But if you have an affiliate offer, it would look a little different. It would look like this. You'd have a Facebook ad, which would go to your opt-in page, which would then go to a redirect page, which would then later land on the offer page of whatever affiliate product or offer you have right there. And again, that's all explained in the prior video and such. I just want to briefly mention that. Now, what's most important? Now, when you're paying for Facebook ads, it's important to get a long-term value out of all the traffic. This will help you not only earn more money, especially in the long run, but you'll basically, at the same time, have a lot more to spend on building your business, which will basically give you a huge advantage over your competition. Because if you're basically making $3 for every dollar you spend, and your competition's making $1.50 on every dollar, if you outspend them and spend $2 to make 3, you basically put them out of business. As such, it's usually recommended that you try to build a list and get as many leads as possible that you can then try to monetize, right then and also well into the future. So I know a lot of people might try to advertise and not build a list, but I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table, because once you build that list, you can market to them on day one as well as months or even years, into the future. Now next, I want to get into what should you say on your ad. You want your ad to not only be very targeted, but to also give people a clear idea of why they should pay attention, click through, and opt in, or get whatever it is that you're trying to get them to get or buy. Addressing problems while explaining specific benefits are key. The more enticing you have of any offer, the better. But realize that you have to stand out. You can't just have an ad that says, make more money, click here, or buy furniture, or my paintings. I mean, you have to have an offer that really gets guys to pay it, or you have to have an ad that gets guys to pay attention, because they're bombarded by not only ads but everything else in their timeline, news of their friends and news and world events and all sorts of stuff. So you want to make sure that you stand out. And this is where pattern disrupts can help both in the ad graphic as well as the text. And this is anything that you can do to disrupt a person's mindset. So this can be like it can be a funny thing, it can be an obnoxious ad, anything that makes it basically stand a little bit out and not look like the norm. For instance, to give you an example of one that I actually use, not in an actual ad, but on an event that I was talking at, as basically a bonus, I threw in like a little treat from Wisconsin, which was basically a cow pie, which is basically a large piece of candy. It's like caramel and chocolate and pecans and stuff. But as a joke, I showed a picture of cow poo, because in Wisconsin, a cow poo is basically called a cow pie, and basically treats are meant to look like a cow pie. So if you show basically a picture of a cow poo or a cow pie, it's basically a pattern disrupt, because everyone isn't really expecting that, and they're like, whoa, what's that? Why is there a pile of crap up on the screen? And it grabs all their attention. Likewise, on an ad, anything that you can do to grab attention like that will stand out a great deal there. You don't necessarily have to, but it can help a great deal. You also want to encourage people to interact, with your message, and this can be as simple as encouraging them to leave a comment or like or anything, or share or anything like that. Even if you just say, "What are your thoughts? Please, comment below," or anything like that. Anytime you ask them to basically comment, always gets more guys to basically comment. And the reason why that's important is, one, if they do some kind of interaction, not only are they more likely to follow through on basically other stuff, but other people and friends and stuff of theirs are more likely to basically see what they're doing, so it spreads the message more. And on top of that, Facebook also looks at that. So if they see that, let's say, any ad you have is basically getting like a lot more shares or comments and stuff, they think, well, gee, people seem to really like this, so we should maybe show this ad for less money, because the user experience is really good. Whereas if there's an ad that gets like zero interaction or even negative interaction, Facebook says, well, gee, people seem to hate this. They don't like it when this is shown, so let's either jack this guy's ad costs up or shut down that ad. So that's why that's very important. That's why it's also important not to make any crazy claims that will piss off anyone, and just make sure that you're basically looking out for the people you're trying to advertise to. Another thing is that contradictory or time-relevant messages can help a ton. For instance, in the States, as well as in Mexico and stuff, in the Caribbean lately, there's been like a lot of random natural disasters. There's been, I think like 3 or 4 hurricanes, on top of like 2 or 3 earthquakes in Mexico and stuff. So it's all in the news, and if you can have your ad or your message be related to anything like that, it can help stand out. So if you sell, like, let's say emergency supplies, instead of having a normal ad for emergency supplies, which might work, you could specifically have basically a message about how they should be prepared for like the next earthquake, or say, hey, don't be like the X amount of thousands and thousands and thousands of people that had less than a day's worth of food. Be prepared. So if you tie in basically your ad to a relevant news piece, it tends to get shared a lot more, tends to get a lot more clicks, and people following through more. Another example is with Bitcoins. So there's been a lot of news lately on Bitcoins. There's been news basically talking about it, increasing in value, news about it basically dropping down, in value, and everyone is interested in what people are basically saying about it. So if you had anything even minorly related to that, you could mention that somewhere in your ad, or have a headline based around that, and it gets people to pay attention. It gets them involved. I saw actually a few examples of that. One was, there was basically an ad for it was like some kind of like like a stock investing thing, and it basically was trying to rip on Bitcoin, saying like don't bother with I forgot exactly, but it was like don't bother with like investments that can increase or decrease by a third in one night. Instead, here's a safe route that consistently has made X amount of returns for the past 100 years. So because it touches on the relevant news of Bitcoin, that gets people's attention, and they're enticed by, wow, this guy is basically he's contradicting what all the news about, basically saying Bitcoin's being great. I want to pay attention to see what he's basically saying. And again, anything like that can get a lot of clicks, get a lot of interaction, and help basically reduce your ad costs and stuff even more. And another example I saw on the internet marketing side, there was also a guy who had an ad based on Bitcoin saying, why bother with Bitcoins when you can make more by basically doing this or that. So all those I thought were pretty good examples right there. Another thing that can help a great deal on your ad itself is adding a link within your ad, within the text, can help improve click-through rates. So you don't want to just have it on the get more information button, which that's typically the way that most guys would click through. They'd click the get info button, or they'd click your ad itself. But if within basically the text you have a link to, just having that can increase the amount of clicks that you get. You also want to try to make your actual graphic or your your actual image actually pop and stand out. The more you can have it essentially pop, the more likely you are to get clicks, the more likely you are to have people basically see that as well. You also, and this is a big one too, if you're advertising to desktop and mobile users, make sure that the ads look nice on both of those. I've seen a lot of times people will create an ad that looks really good on a desktop, but on a phone it looks horrible. But they haven't actually bothered to check that, and Facebook won't really warn you and say, hey, this looks like crap. I mean, there's a preview where they'll kind of show you kind of what it looks like, but not a lot of people pay attention. So you'll want to make sure to actually look at what it looks like, and pay attention when you create the ad inside of Facebook. They can show you a preview of it, so make sure that you make sure that it looks good and reads well in both cases, and that's a crucial thing too. And if you don't have like a a graphics guy and you don't want to hire one and you don't know how to make any graphics, one easy way, which is a lot of it is free. There's also some cheap ones. You can go to canva.com. That's canva.com. It's free to sign up. It's basically a way that allows you to make cool images, or graphical text. And they also have there's also a default Facebook ad size and stuff like that. You can start by basically making the ad any size that you want, including sizes within Facebook's terms. And there's a lot of free images that you can use. You can add your own text. You can change anything. And what's cool is that they have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of free images that you can put together. And they also have tons and tons and tons of extra images that are only $1 a piece. So you can mix and match, and if you want to make a completely free image, you can. If you want to make one that uses like one or two of basically the dollar images, it costs you then basically a couple bucks to use your image. But you can create some pretty cool ones. Like you can basically drag and drop, let's say, a picture of a monkey, and then drag and drop a picture of a hat to go on the monkey, and then create like a bullet text point to have the monkey talking, and it's super easy. It's probably the easiest program I've used in terms of like making ads. I mean, I'm not really a graphics guy at all, but I basically caught on within a matter of minutes there, and made some decently nice ones there. You also want to make sure that you focus.
Hey, Brian, and one other thing too, for those of you that don't want to make your own ads, you could do something as simple as go to Fiverr, where there are guys who have made literally thousands of ads, and you can get 2 or 3 ads made for $5-10. They're not expensive if you just want someone to make your first set of ads, so you don't have to.
Yeah, and that's a great thing too. Again, Fiverr for $5, super easy and cheap there. But as I was saying right here, you also want to focus more of your time on the headlines themselves, because that's what people typically see first. They see the headline and the actual graphic that you have, so make sure that those are good and have them be precise and attention-grabbing. And like let's say if your goal, let's say, is to I don't know, sell, like, let's say, an SEO service. Don't just say, hey, this is Atlanta's best SEO service. I mean, that might get some clicks. Or I mean, don't say, hey, this is the best SEO service or anything like that. Again, might get some clicks, but what would be basically better is have it be something more like the 3 mistakes every local business in Atlanta makes, or the three mistakes on your website that you're probably making that's preventing you from ranking, or something that grabs like attention, gets basically curiosity sparked. And again, if you can tie it into like anything like any current news or anything like that, that's a huge plus right there. If you're selling, like, let's say you just have a site that sells a bunch of unique toys, you could have a headline like the three best toys for, or 3 best toys for this Christmas that are guaranteed to sell out soon. Anything like that kind of grabs attention and gets guys to click through. Now, what to watch out for, there's a few things. One, you want to monitor and manage comments on your ads. And the important part with that is, like, there's always crazy people. You can be the nicest person in the world. You can have the nicest product in the world, and someone is going to be a dick to you. It's almost guaranteed. It's just the way people are. It's super easy to be negative, and that's what sometimes people do. But if you see a negative comment on an ad of yours, a lot of people just leave those, which oftentimes if that's like the only thing that you see, that looks really bad and that can really hurt, you know, your click-through rates and your sales and all that. But the opposite is, a lot of people think, okay, this person said some bad stuff, I just want to delete the, you know, comment, which is an option that you can, you know, on, you know, your Facebook ads. But the problem is, if you delete them, you know, we've seen that can sometimes set off some red flags. So instead, when you click on the comment, instead of clicking to delete, click hide. And that does not seem to set off the red flags at all, and it prevents other people from seeing basically what the comment was anyways. So if it was really mean, that solves that right there. And you also want to make, again, absolutely sure that you're not violating any of the Facebook terms. Again, like no guns or violence, no crazy claims. Like, you can't say, like, for instance, if you're selling a course in internet marketing, it's very risky to say, you know, learn how to turn, you know, $1,000 into $100,000 in one night. That sounds like a crazy claim. That'd be against their terms. It upsets people too, and can get you kind of shut down fairly fast. Where instead, like, let's say you really did turn like $1,000 into $100K, you could say instead, which would be not as risky, would be, you know, how I turned $1,000 into, you know, 100K by doing these three things. So you're using yourself as a case study or another person as a case study instead. That's a bit more safe. But at the same time, you don't want to have any claim that, like, people basically by default will think you're full of BS, because they'll tend to complain about that, which can of course send off the red flags. You also want to make sure that you're not advertising to non-English or bad countries in most cases. But don't automatically assume that they're not going to work in all cases. So in some cases, you might have a country that doesn't speak English, you know, as a first language, but might be okay to advertise to. And I'll talk about that in just a bit on, you know, how that can work. But a lot of times, what I've seen a lot of guys do, including some guys that claim that they're Facebook experts, they'll show off very cheap clicks. They won't really show the details of it. And oftentimes, you know, what I'll find out is a lot of stuff that they're basically showing are cheap clicks from places, you know, like Nigeria. And not to bash that as a whole, because I'm sure that there's plenty of, like, good people in, like, a lot of those places, but there's also, you know, a lot of, like, very cheap clicks of, like, you know, fake clicks and bot clicks and lots of fraud where, and even if it's not fraud, oftentimes clicks that never turn into sales or any worthwhile leads or anything like that. I mean, I've seen places where, you know, if I advertise to one, you know, place, I might have like a 50% opt-in rate or better, and in another place, I might get very cheap clicks, but it might be like a 1% opt-in rate. And people brag about, like, super cheap clicks, and again, that doesn't really mean much. It's how much do you get per lead and how much do you get per sale, and do those leads turn into sales? So make sure that, you know, usually at the start I try to exclude, you know, a handful of the countries that, you know, aren't really worthwhile to you, or only focus on, you know, maybe the top 5 or the top 10 places to start with. But I'll share some tips on how to help with that in just a second here. Also, moving on to some more, you know, insider tips. The more people like your ad, the more likely you'll get basically cheaper ad costs, because again, Facebook, similar to Google and other places that have ads and stuff, want the user experience to be really good. So if not a lot of people like your ad and stuff, they'll try to jack up, you know, your ad costs, or just shut the ad, you know, down. But if they really like it, it usually reduces your ad costs, because not only does that usually mean you get more clicks and shares and stuff, Facebook will also reward you at the same time. Facebook also looks at how many people dislike your ad, And this can sometimes lead to ad accounts being shut down, having you getting high costs and all that too. So it's super useful to make sure that you don't do anything that basically pisses off a large majority of people. So again, just keep that in mind right there. And another tip, ads to English countries outside of the main ones, like the US, UK, Australia, and so forth, can often be less competitive and cheaper. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be better or worse for your market, but it's something you want to keep in mind. So for instance, a place like Ireland, might not be considered a top English country, but they speak English, and they're not really thought of by a lot of people as a place to advertise to. Whereas like the U.S. is, what a lot of people think, hey, that's a huge market, let's advertise only right there, so it can be a little more competitive. Another thing that you can do too is you can do ads to English-speaking expats in other countries, because not a lot of people will always think to basically advertise to these people, and it can be another cheap way to get targeted sales. So that there might be people living abroad that might be in a country that as a whole won't have a lot of English speakers, but you can basically target a smaller amount of people more specifically, and sometimes at a cheaper rate too. You also want to make sure to look at what gender and ages are not only turning into leads, but also buying. And this is because your common sense or your logic can often be wrong, right? And I've seen a lot of people, even like guys that claim to be like Facebook ad experts and stuff like that, they'll completely analyze or think through their target market wrong. Like there was one guy that we actually dealt with who thought that the target market would be a guy age 18 to 35, because he thought, hey, that's the age group that seems to be trendy, that seems to be into this stuff, yada yada. And in reality, guess who was buying more? The older crowd was in that case. So he was actually he completely excluded an entire market that was actually a far better buyer for his product than he thought. Or another example is one time we sold like these like phone cords, and they lit up and look really, really nice, and we thought, hey, this will probably only sell to like really young, people like 18 to 25 or so, because that's kind of a trendy thing that we thought the younger crowd would like. Well, turned out we were wrong in that, and it was actually a more popular product with an older crowd, a much older crowd, and the younger crowd didn't seem to like it at all. It didn't really get nearly as many sales. So even though the common sense or logic might sometimes make you think the opposite's true, you got to test it, and you got to check your data. And even like I've seen guys that spend literally hundreds of thousands a month, on Facebook and on ads and stuff like that. And oftentimes what they think is their target market is actually wrong when you look at who's actually buying. And one of the great things with automated ads is it can help you not only see that and analyze that, in the report itself, but it can automatically help adjust, and optimize based upon all that too. Another big thing too is don't turn on and off ads that you intend to keep unless absolutely necessary. This is because every time you turn off an ad and turn it back on, Facebook sometimes will try to re-optimize it. So sometimes a good ad set can start over from scratch again, which doesn't necessarily mean it will basically pick up where it left off. Now, it doesn't mean you can never turn off an ad, especially if it's bad, but just keep that in mind right there, because usually ad sets take a little time to optimize, and if you turn it off, they basically view it like it's a new ad set, which is kind of stupid on their part, but that's how they basically work there. And also, another tip is just because one ad set does poorly, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad ad or targeting. It could be, but Facebook's algorithm, oftentimes the all the best guess out there, and it seems from all the data that we've seen and that others have seen, is that you're randomly put, like every ad set that you have is randomly put basically in a different group of advertisers. So by random chance, you might be put in a bad group where it's extremely competitive. People are paying a lot because there's like 1 or 2 or 3 advertisers that are basically trying to buy up everything. So your ad cost skyrockets, even if you have an awesome ad and awesome targeting and all that. Whereas you might get lucky and be in another group that has almost no one paying much, so you might have like super cheap ads and stuff there. So what I recommend is usually when you use automated ads, if you're making an optimized ad set, have at least a few of them out there to really test. Don't just have one, because by random chance you might have a really good optimized ad set, but it might be by random chance placed in a very bad group. So yeah, that's why I usually like to have several ad sets just to test. So yeah, again, as I said, when you use these software, make sure to have several ad sets, and also give Facebook as well as automated ads a chance to optimize. And this means typically you should wait at least a few days to a week or so, because usually Facebook itself will take at least a few days to basically optimize, and automated ads needs a chance to basically analyze a lot of data and stuff to get basically a bigger picture. Now, of course, if you have like a horrible result after like a day or two, yeah, you can shut those down. That's fine. But if it's like only a bit more expensive or anything like that, usually wait a bit more and let it have time to basically analyze, and optimize. Now, another tip is if you're trying to grab ad management clients, offer to run a free report to impress them, with your knowledge, because again, as I showed off at the start, you can get a lot of data right off the bat, like the best times, the best age group, the best gender. I mean, all that stuff in a matter of seconds is listed right there, and you look like you're super impressive. And oftentimes, if someone thinks that basically their target market is one group, and it turns out it's the complete opposite, you look like a genius, and they're more likely to obviously pay attention, listen to whatever it is you have to say or sell. You also want to always test mobile versus desktop versus newsfeed versus desktop right side, or basically test ad placements. Reason being is you might have the exact same ad that might do really well on mobile, might not do that well on desktop, and even on the desktop side, it might do really bad on the newsfeed and really great on the desktop right side, or vice versa. And there's not necessarily one thing that's always better than the other one. That's why it's important to basically test all those right there. In fact, I saw another marketer months back that was spending a ton of money, like I think like 100K or so a month, and 80 to 90% of their ad budget was trying to target a different kind of ad than what was getting them the best results. So they actually didn't even know that there was a certain specific ad placement that had a huge ROI that they were almost ignoring, because they didn't really have the breakdown of the data. They didn't know what to actually look at there. And one of the cool things is that we're actually working on a feature within automated ads that we'll have out soon. They'll actually, right off the bat, will be like a jump start where it will basically create a bunch of different ad sets and stuff for you based upon all that info, like mobile, newsfeed, desktop right, and a bunch of other stuff. And so right off the bat, you can run a campaign, and within a few days, you would clearly see which ones are winning really well and which ones aren't, and it will essentially adjust it based upon that, in real time. So that's a pretty cool thing that we'll have out very soon as well, to basically test all that stuff for you right off the bat. Also, another tip is that for mass appeal offers, which basically are like, if you're selling a product that appeals to essentially the masses, like it could be, like a phone charger or something with like a TV, something that the majority, of people use versus, if it's an offer that's only is for like a specific niche, like let's say baseball players or golfers, that wouldn't be as mass appeal, or for only those that own a business, that wouldn't be as massive an appeal. But for mass appeal offers, you don't always need to do much targeting at all. In fact, in some cases, you can sometimes leave the targeting almost completely empty, and Facebook and automated ads will actually optimize for you over time. And what's cool about that is oftentimes, because you're basically bidding on such a broad market, or broad, essentially, target, your costs will actually go way down. So for a mass appeal offer, that can be a cool trick, is sometimes if you don't actually target at all, that can decrease your costs. Now, of course, in some other cases, it might be the exact opposite, which is why it's super important to actually test this, which is why a tool like this helps a great deal. For more targeted offers, you'll want to really think through basically your targeting and how to really find who you're actually looking for. For instance, if you're trying to target like home builders or dentists, you don't just want to target people that like builders or dentists, because you'll get a lot of people who aren't a builder or a dentist. Instead, you can maybe target like a builders association, or you could like a dental association group, something that'd be far more likely to get you people that are actually builders or actually dentists and stuff. So try to think through what your target market might be with that, and you can play around with the Facebook targeting and stuff, and really get like a lot of detail and basically test around. You can also dig super deep into your targeting at the same time. For instance, are Republican dentists more or less likely to take action and buy than a dentist that's a Democrat? You don't know unless you actually test. Now, we've actually tested a lot of that stuff, and we've seen a lot of trends where, in some cases, two identical targets, and one being is essentially also a Republican, and one being also a Democrat, can have vastly different results. One might be a fifth of the cost of another, just for a lead or a sale. But a lot of people never think to actually pinpoint it down to saying only target people who like this and also like this. And when you start to combine those two, you can really see some pretty interesting results. And in time, we're actually developing a few ways to actually dive even more into research like that, and to help you guys target even more. Another big thing to know is that targeted results can actually change over time for various reasons. And you don't just want to write off ones that turn bad, as they can turn good later. For instance, you might find by random chance, let's say maybe, let's say Texas was really good for sales, and all of a sudden, 1 month, it gets really bad. You might say, oh, something went wrong, let's turn this ad off. Well, it could just be that, hey, they had a hurricane, maybe they had a lot more stuff on their mind, and they're not as interested in your golf equipment now. But they might be within a couple months. Or it could be, hey, maybe a lot of people were interested in golf in Wisconsin, but when it started to snow, they don't really care as much. It doesn't mean that it's a bad ad set then, you just might have to wait. And you don't always know the reasons why. And we saw like a lot of differences, when there was the, the presidential, election and all that. There was like a lot of different groups and stuff that were better or worse, depending upon, what kind of news was basically in the news at the time, or when the election was and stuff. Like there were certain ones that did basically better before or after the election. So there's always like a bunch of factors that, you know, I recommend if you find a really good ad set that turns bad, don't dismiss it. Maybe turn that off for like, you know, a week or two or like a month, but revisit it later, turn it back on, and see if it's still bad or if it gets better. You also want to grow your ad budget very slowly, and built into the automated ads, we have basically a feature to help with all that can actually put this all on autopilot. But the rule of thumb is typically you'll want to only grow about basically 20% every, you know, 2 or 3 days or so after you reach about $100 a day for your individual ad set. But if you're not at $100 a day yet, you can double your ad spend before you reach $100. So if you're spending $10 a day and you turn 10 into 30, you can easily double from $10 to $20 and test that out for a few days and see how that goes. But if you're at $100 a day, you don't want to double to 200, as that can throw off the optimization. It's just how Facebook works. So once you reach basically 100 a day, you only want to grow basically 20% at a time every few days or so. And that's why you know, we have basically the feature, or the feature inside of automated ads that will automatically manage your ad budget for you and help you grow that using, you know, not only our equations, but what it sees in the optimization as well. So if it sees it basically doing really well, it will continue to increase it up to your max. If it sees it not basically doing so well, it will try to decrease it. Because sometimes if you decrease an ad budget, you can actually increase your actual results and stuff too. So there's a lot of stuff that it basically looks at and plays around with right there. Another tip is there's two kinds of bidding methods. There's the manual and the automatic. Most do the automatic, which basically is you let Facebook basically decide what you want to basically bid. Manual basically means you'll only pay X amount per like, you know, impressions or you know, anything like that, or what you think you want to pay per you know, sale or lead. Now there's pros and cons, and the pro of the automatic way is that it's super easy, and it's the easiest one to basically scale. On the manual way, the pro is you can sometimes get very cheap leads or cheap sales, but it's harder to grow, because if you have a very low bid, your ad won't be shown as much, so you can't really grow all that fast, but you can occasionally get some very cheap leads and even sales. Now the trick that we do, that we're actually building a feature for to help, is that we'll have a handful of both. So we'll have some manual ad sets just to get some very cheap leads and sales, but we know that they don't grow that much. Whereas we have a bunch of automatic ones that can grow and scale really fast. So, you know, if the max that we want to pay is, let's say, 60 cents, you know, per lead, we can use the automatic bids to help achieve that. But with the manual bids, we can sometimes get like leads at like 10 or 20 cents. We just can't really scale those. So we have basically a feature in the works that will automatically set that stuff up for you from the get-go right there. So that's kind of cool and should be out soon. Another tip too is sometimes you don't want to send guys straight to, you know, a sales page, and you usually want to send guys to some kind of like an opt-in page first. But there's another thing that you can do as well, is you can send them to like a pre-sale page, or like a blog post, or like an article, or a review, or even have like a really long ad where it's almost like a blog post is basically the ad itself. Now those are usually better if you're trying to really appeal to a very specific high-end client. where you probably won't get like tons and tons and tons of leads, but you're like, let's say, trying to narrow it down to like only people that have like a big business and have a specific issue that you can solve, that will take the time to read all that. So it tends to, having a long pre-sale page or like a longer ad or sending to a blog post, it can weed out a bit more, which is good if you're trying to fine tune who you're selling to, but that's usually better only if you're trying to target like a client that's looking to spend like $1,000 a month or $5K a month, or lots and lots of money, versus if you're trying to sell like a cheap, like $7 or $10 then usually that just kind of kills your sales unnecessarily. You also want to make sure to test custom audiences and lookalikes after you build up a decent amount of leads and sales. And I don't go into a lot of detail on that here because we have on the prior trainings, we actually show how to set that all up and why they're important, so I didn't really want to repeat myself, but you can easily build a custom audience based upon any lists that you have, or any visitors that go to your page or check out your ads and stuff like that. You can basically build up a huge list off of that, and then you can have Facebook automatically basically target people that look like that, and you can sometimes get some much cheaper ads and stuff there as well. And if that's of interest to you, which it should be, make sure to check out essentially the videos that talk just on that, on how to set up the pixels and all that right there. And also, last but not least, you also want to make use of your list. There's usually tons of money left on the table there, and there's a lot of people that either don't build a list off their ads, or they build a list but they don't really mail it then. And for you to make more money, which allows you to not only spend more to obtain those leads, and obtain those sales, you want to make sure that you mail your list on a consistent basis to make more and more. Even if you don't have your own, if you don't have a lot of your own products or services to sell, there's also affiliate products and services and stuff that you can sell and get paid on as well. Now, to briefly mention a few things that we're actually working on, we're actually fine-tuning a few current things inside the software right now to kind of streamline essentially the process, a bit more, make it a little easier, fine-tune a few things. That we'll have an update out either later this week or so. We were actually planning on it last week, but a few things basically popped up that made it a bit more hard. So hopefully later this week we'll have that out. And then after that, we'll basically be making a jumpstart feature, or like a button that will be super cool and useful. And that will basically, with a click of a button, it will automatically help create a bunch of different versions on a bunch of different ads and ad types and placements and all that stuff for you. So within a few days, you can know, hey, what are the winners, what are the losers, and it can help you get a lot of info without you having to really know or do much. So that will be out shortly after that. And that's a very, very cool thing that I'm excited about, because that will save me a ton of time. And then after that, we'll be making an ad maker, and that basically will help make it super easy to create like a bunch of ads at once for you. So like if you have, like, let's say a store, okay, like an online store, we're working on a tool that will look at all the products you have and quickly and easily turn them all into ads for you based upon the information that you have on those sites. Then you can quickly and easily basically change or modify any of those ads that you want. But if you have a store with like 100 products, with a click of a button, you can create 100 ads and then advertise to a ton of those, all at once right there. So that would be super, super, super awesome. But that's a bit more of a hard one, but that's currently in the works. And again, that's all included, in your membership right here. Now, if you have questions or want to suggest, any new features or anything like that, again, you can email us at automatedAdsHelp@gmail.com. gmail.com. So again, any questions at all, send to us right there. You can also feel free to ask anything you want right now too, but also make sure to spend some time to look at our prior training that we have, again, in the training tab, as we have a ton of specific info, and examples and stuff there and how to set up everything. So make sure to check out that. And again, if you have any other questions past that, you can always write us at automatedAdsHelp@gmail.com, and they'll always get back to you in one business day or less. Usually a matter of like an hour or less if it's not a really odd time at night or anything like that. But if there's any current questions or anything like that, you can feel free to ask those now, and Sean or I will try to answer you. So Sean, if there's any questions that you see or anything like that, feel free to shout those out.
Yes, in answering a question here, one thing I wanted to add to the idea of optimization and how long it takes and what results you're going to get. One of the things you just have to realize overall is the more events that occur, the better you're going to be able to get optimization. And events are whatever gets tracked, which are going to be leads or sales in this case, right? If you say, okay, I want to promote a webinar and my average sale is $1,000 on my webinar and I want to optimize for purchases, you're not going to get a lot of transactions unless you've got a massive budget, right? I mean, you could spend $100 a day for a week and you might not have a sale, but hey, then on the 8th day you might get 3 sales, right? It's going to be really all over the place because your transaction count is low because your dollar amount is high. On the opposite side of it, if you optimized for lead, which is what everyone I know that's running traffic to webinars does, you're going to see much better results. You can still track the sales to make sure that you're making money from your Facebook ads and which ads that they're coming from, but you're going to spend, depending upon what your niche is and what your country is, $5 or $7 or $8 to get a webinar registration. But instead of that happening, maybe one time in a week that you got a sale, if you're spending $100 a day, that's going to happen 20 times a day. Well, 20 times a day is a whole lot more information to crunch than maybe one thing that happened in a week, okay? Same thing as if you're selling e-com products, right? You're going to get faster optimization when you've got lower price stuff. Like if you're doing free plus shipping, then you're going to see a lot more transactions than if you're trying to sell $500 or $1,000 watches. So hopefully that makes good sense to everybody. I don't see any questions popping in, Brian. I think probably now everyone's brains got melted because you gave them so much info in the last hour and a half.
Good. Well, if there's anything else that pops up or you guys have any questions at all, again, first check basically the training area that we have right now. And then, of course, you can also always write the address that you see right there, which is automatedAdsHelp@gmail.com. So with that, guys, I want to thank you for being on this call. And any other questions that pop up, feel free to reach out to us right there. Otherwise, I wish you guys have a great rest of the week. Let us know, again, if you have any questions. And let us know what you use the software for and how all that goes as well, because we'd love to hear from you. We've heard from some already, and that's always nice and fun there. So with that, guys, have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you later.